Belle, have you heard anything about my son?
I have. I heard that there's been some trouble with the business and all of that, right?
That's right. All has to do with this recession the economy has gotten into. And now it's his company's turn to be affected by it.
So this is going to be a pretty large problem then, right? I tried asking my husband about it all, but he wouldn't really walk me through all the details about what's going on. He had a terrible frown on his face and all, so that means something bad is about to happen to it.
Considering the pride he has, I can understand why he doesn't want to talk about it with you. After all, he put everything into that business, and it was like a second child to him.
I can see that, but I am still his wife. I would really like it if he talked with me some more about what's going on here, in case there's something I could do to help out.
I'm sure you would like that, and I'm sure that pretty soon here he will be talking to you some more.
You think so?
For the time being, all we can really do for him is be here to support whatever it is that he needs, right?
That's right. We have our daughter as well to think about, and so I want to do anything that will help set his company straight.
Thank you for saying that. I bet my son is such a happy man, having been able to marry a woman like you. So, there's one way I think you can support my son.
And what could that be?
I would like for you to become the guarantor for when he has to borrow a lot of money.
What? How much is he going to have to borrow, though?
600 million is what I've been told.
$600 million? That's not the kind of money that I could possibly do anything about.
And the same thing can be said about my son right now. Hence why he needs you there to support him with that right now.
But that is impossible, Georgia. If anything, it should be you becoming the guarantor for him, right? Unlike us, you have all that money and that house left over from your husband.
Belle, are you saying that I take responsibility for all the debt he's gotten into?
No, that's not what I said there.
Listen, no matter what you have to say about the current situation, it's too late.
What do you mean by that?
Because I've already gone and made you the guarantor for my son's $600 million loan.
What? You've already written me down as the guarantor for that?
I have, which means you can't back out of it now.
How dare you do something like that? That can't be legal.
Well, that's too bad for you because everything has already been processed and dealt with. I made sure to sign all the paperwork for you with your name, and the bank was more than happy to work with that.
I'm not playing any games here. Now you've really taken things way too far with me, Georgia.
And now, have I taken things way too far with you? You're his wife, and as his wife, it's your job to help him. If you have any complaints about that, then I'll kick you out of this family.
You'll kick me out?
And by the way, this was all my son's idea. With the help of him, we were able to make you partially responsible for all that money he's having to borrow.
That makes sense. He's the only one who has ever seen my signature before. This is screwed up, though. Had you at least told me one thing before all of that?
We never needed your permission to do this, though. From now on, you're going to be helping out with paying off that loan that he had to take out for his company.
You have to be joking.
Belle, did you hear about what's been going on with my brother?
Oh, about all the debt he's in?
Yeah. Are you gonna be alright?
Well, in terms of myself.
I'm sorry for what's been forced onto you.
Hey, that's not something you should be apologizing for, though.
But I've always been against my brother having a business of any kind. Not saying that he's completely incompetent when it comes to running a business. But I knew it would never work out for a man like him.
Now that you mention it, you have always been telling him things about that.
Yet, he never once listened and started the business anyway. And now is watching it all crumble down around him.
Maybe someone like him thought he'd see the future where his company would thrive.
But when thinking of all the things you've done for this family to help us make things work, I won't allow you to take on any more of our burden.
You won't allow me? Did I ever do anything for you all in the first place?
I'm talking about my dad and his care. You ended up taking care of him in my mom's place, all because she was too childish and self-centered to care, right?
But nothing about that really felt like taking on a burden that you had all left me with. I wanted to be there for your father because he really thought of me like his daughter and treated me like an important member of the family. Also, when it comes to my daughter, your father really spoiled her a lot. After all, she really loved him and made him so happy to have a granddaughter. It's because your father was around and was too kind that this family was able to share so many happy memories amongst one another. So really, the reason I went and cared for him during his final years was to repay him for all he done for me.
Is that right? Is Charlie doing alright?
Yes, of course she's doing well. Currently, I'm doing my very best to make sure that she has a really good future and all after this.
I see. And I think the same thing. I want her to be raised the best way possible in a loving and caring family. So if there's ever any issues with that debt my brother's got into, Tell me about it. I would hate for it to have a major effect on Charlie's life. Consider me your friend during these hard times, alright?
Are you sure? Are you sure it's okay for me to ask for help?
Of course, Belle. I happen to really love my dad as well when he was around. And the reason he was able to enjoy this last few years on Earth in peace was because of you. I really appreciate what you did for him then.
I see. Well, if you're wanting to help, then let me tell you something really important.
Of course. Say whatever you have to say to me.
I'm having to take on a large part of my husband's debt.
What? Why do you have to deal with any of that?
In regards to that, I'd like to talk with you in a little bit more detail about it all.
Belle, could you tell me your plan for helping us pay this debt off? I would like to know what you're going to do in order to help pay off $600 million worth of debt.
Why are you asking me that question? That's the kind of conversation you should be having with your son right now, correct?
That kid is wanting to start up another business now. So the one who should be managing all the debt now is you, Belle.
So he's just going to deny the present issues we're having and try again with all of that?
What was that? What was that kind of attitude you just had?
My husband tries way too hard to make a bunch of money in one go, and that's starting to annoy me a lot. Right now isn't the time for that kind of thinking anymore, and what he should be doing is focusing on the debt that he's in now. What's wrong with just getting another job and making the money overtime to pay things off first, and then trying again in the future?
That isn't the kind of thing you should be saying anything about right now. That kid has an act for business, so just shut your mouth and watch him go.
For someone who has an act for business, it's a bit strange that he'd be in debt 9 figures at this point in time, right?
Anyway, in my son's place, you will be taking care of that debt. Now you get out there and start paying it off.
I just can't go out and start paying it off right now, though. My daughter is going to be applying for schools pretty soon here, and I have to be around in order to support her there.
Huh? If your husband needs your help with all of his debt right now, then who gives a damn about your daughter going to school?
Are you freaking kidding me right now? She happens to have a future of her own that I want to support. So in order to make all of that happen, I'm going to stay by her side and make sure she knows what she's doing.
You putting her through things like applying for schools and all that is strange to me.
What the hell do you mean by that?
I am telling you that you have to start paying off that debt. Yet you keep going on about how you're going to send your daughter to college. How are you going to do that when you don't even have the money for it? When your daughter gets out of high school, you send her to work right away. And then the two of you will be paying off the debt for my son.
I'm not going to allow that to happen to her, or I.
All right then. I'll have David start to pay some of his debt off then. He's working a very good job now as well, and will be more than capable of paying some of the debt off.
Wait a second, Georgia. David has a family of his own as well now, which means he has more important matters to deal with than taking care of his brother's debt.
Shut the hell up already. If he doesn't do something for his older brother who is in a pinch, then what are we going to do? He's a part of this family as well, so he has to help us with all his debt, right?
No way. Why do you have to force everyone in this family to go through hell, all for something that is my husband's fault? Can you please stop getting your family wrapped into all this trouble again?
This is for the family, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to make things right. And, as a part of my family, you, your daughter, David, and all of his family will start working in order to pay off that debt. I will not listen to any of your whining and complaining anymore.
Please cut that crap out right now. What happened to my husband's business and himself this time was what he had coming for him, which means I'm not going to sit here and allow myself to be wrapped into any more of it.
Belle, you've pulled all your crap together and found yourself a job now as well, right?
Mom, asking me to go out and find a good enough job to pay off debt with it isn't as easy as you think during a recession. I don't even have a good education or resume either.
I told you already, I'm not listening to any more of your whining and complaining, right? If you're not going to get a job soon, how are we going to be able to pay $600 million worth of debt for my son? Or would you rather start selling some of your organs in order to pay it off?
I would never do something as crazy as that. Can you please start thinking about all of this with a bit more common sense?
Well then, you better find yourself a job right now. At this point, a part-time job would be better than doing nothing at all. And if you start working 3 or 4 of them for 24 hours a day with no breaks, at some point, all that debt would be paid off, right?
If I were to do that, then my body would break down before getting anywhere close to $50,000 paid off. And then what? Who would be around to take care of my daughter? I'm not going to do what you're telling me to, Georgia.
Stop going on and on with that nonsense. If you continue to go on about how you're not going to get a job and work for us, then I'm going to kick you out of the family.
Well, I've already left the house.
What? What are you talking about right now?
Well, you told me before that if I didn't want to work in order to pay off my husband's debt, then I'd have to leave the house and the family, right? So I left.
Are you serious?
Very much so. After all, it was you who told me to leave you guys if I didn't want to get a job and work.
Then what's going to happen to my son? What did he say before you left? There's no way he was going to let you leave like that.
Actually, I'm not sure what he would say about this, as he doesn't even know that I'm gone yet.
Why?
You think I'd care to say anything to a man that wouldn't even care about what his own wife thinks? And would forge her own signature to make her responsible for his debt? Absolutely not. I have a daughter that I need to protect, and this was the action I've taken in order to do just that.
But you've always been a housewife and nothing else. What are you going to do about money?
And for a short time, I'll be back at my parents' house. And as for work, I have a friend from back in my school days who has a company now as well, and we are currently talking about having me go and work for them. So you don't have to worry about my financial circumstances.
But just a second ago, you said you didn't have a job.
Well, I don't have one decided on yet. I still have to go through an interview and things like that later. But well, I think my friend will be more than happy to let me work for them.
And you were going to keep all that money you make for yourself?
I would never do something like that. I plan to use the money I make in order to send my daughter to college.
And what's going to happen with my son then? He should be more like family to you than anyone else.
Not at all, because my husband is no longer family to me.
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to divorce him. I've already been talking with him about things like that before, and so I made sure to leave the divorce papers at the house for him.
You're divorcing him?
You think I was just going to stay together with a loser like that? There was no way him and I could stay together any longer, after he gone and did what he done, making me the guarantor for his debt, without ever asking me a single thing first. And then, you guys wanting to force my daughter to give up on our future and just start working to pay off that debt is BS. I'm going to cut ties to all of you now.
For some reason, you really do seem serious here.
Of course. I would never think about joking over something as serious as all of this.
If that's what ends up happening, then the only other person who can pay off that debt would be David. Are you really okay with doing that to him?
What?
It makes sense, right? If you run off and never come back, the only person we have left is David. You're going to leave me with no other choice but to force David to be the one to take on all of that debt. Oh, I feel so bad for poor little David.
For starters, the only one who should be forced to pay off all that debt is my husband.
And I told you already that that won't happen. And that's why you were made the ones who had to pay it off for him. Yet you went and ran away from us with your daughter, leaving us with David being the only person we can rely on now.
Well, David isn't going to listen to anything the two of you try and ask him to do.
Don't be so quick to think such a thing. That boy's always listened to everything, and is the easiest pushover we've ever seen. I guess it's time for me to go and ask him to start paying off all the debt now. I have no use for you anymore, so don't you ever contact me again. David, things have really gone downhill for us here.
Mom? What's happened over there?
Actually, this has to do with some of the debt that your brother is in.
I've heard all about that, Mom. Things have been really tough there, it seems.
And so, your brother and I decided that it would become a family effort to help your brother pay off all of his debt.
Yeah, I heard about that as well.
However, the problem is, your brother's wife went and took a little bit of money with her and ran off.
What? What do you mean she took a little bit of money and ran off?
She told us to take what little money we had and send it to her in order to use toward the debt. But when we did that, she took it all and ran it away. And to make things even worse, she left divorce papers at our house. She really just went and left us with nothing at all, and the only person left we can ask for help is you, David.
Hold on a second. I don't really think that someone like Belle would ever be able to do something like that.
Listen, David, ever since she began to notice her husband's company not doing so well, she was preparing to run off with whatever money she could manage to take. And you know what else? She didn't even bother taking her own daughter with her, and is only going to save her own skin.
Are you telling me the truth right now?
Well, of course I am, David. That's why I'm asking you to please help us pay off this debt your brother got into.
Not happening.
What? David, are you just going to stand up and abandon your older brother like that?
He was asking to be abandoned after what he'd done, forcing his wife to take on all that debt without her ever asking her first, and then going off to try to start yet another business.
What the hell are you saying?
Did you really think I knew nothing about what was going on over there, Mom?
I know what's just happened. You must have been told loads of bullcrap from Belle before I got to you. And that's why you're upset, right? Well, all of those things were lies she was saying.
I'm not believing you, Mom.
Why the hell not? You and I are family, right?
I was shown all the paperwork that forced Belle to become the one to take on all that debt from her husband. And there we could see that her signature was made on the papers, even though she wasn't the one to sign them or agree to them. After having been shown all of that, how do you expect me to believe any of the things you are saying, when you've already shown me that you are more than comfortable with committing fraudulent acts?
You have it all wrong. You are misunderstanding all of this.
But unlike you, someone like Bell happened to be with Dad until the very end. Unlike his own wife who abandoned him and was never around at home to care for him. There's no way someone like her who happens to care so much about someone else's family would just get up and run away for no good reason. After what you both did to her, that love she was trying to hold on to with you guys died off. And she had no other choice but to run away after that.
Wait a second, David. Calm down there.
And just like Belle, I'm feeling the same way after what's happened this time. I'm fed up with the both of you. From now on, don't you guys ever bother me again. I'm cutting ties now. We'll never think of both of you as family ever again. So don't you ever talk to me anymore.
It's all because of you that David is now cutting ties to us.
It's not at all because of me, though. That's just the outcome that both of you deserve after all you've done to your own family.
What am I going to do about this? If nothing happens soon, then that debt is really going to become a problem for me.
How about you do what you were always trying to force me to do and get a job in order to make some money?
How am I supposed to go out and work a job when I'm already close to turning 60 now?
Is that right? You'll be turning 60 soon? Well, that's cool and all, but what does that have to do with you being able to work or not?
Belle, you're not actually thinking of running away from your husband and I like that forever, right?
You can call it running away, but I like to call it starting a brand new life, which I've already began preparing for now.
Just because you're divorcing my son doesn't mean that your duty of paying off that debt just goes away, though.
Why would you think that?
Listen, you're bound by law to be the one to pay off that debt after you sign those contracts. I don't care if you do end up being able to divorce my son and all. You're still going to have to pay off all that debt without question. Now, if you rethink what you're doing there and come back to this house and stay with my son, I'll be willing to help out with paying off that debt a little, all right? How does that sound? That's a pretty enticing deal, right? There's no way a single person would ever be able to pay off $600 million worth of debt, right?
I already told you before that the contract you tried and signed me on for would be never valid, right?
And I told you that it's already been processed and accepted by the bank.
You really think this country and that bank are stupid enough to allow you to force another person to take on someone else's debt like that? No way.
But the bank did accept the signatures and everything.
No, they didn't, because I've already been told that they threw all that paperwork out.
What? What the hell do you mean by that?
After getting in touch with a friend who also happens to be a lawyer, they looked into all of that for me and told the bank to toss all that paperwork out. He proved to the bank that I was in no part aware of those papers being signed by you and my husband and forced the bank to disregard anything that had to do with my name, which means those contracts and everything are gone now.
You're lying.
Not at all. So with all of that in mind now, there is no way I'm responsible for paying off even a cent of that debt now, and I never ever will be. Therefore, please, you two go and start making those payments now.
What's going to happen to my son then?
From what I can imagine, he's probably been told the news about what's happened and is freaking the hell out now.
Well, if you're still talking to him at all, can you tell him to never ever come back to my house now?
What? Hold on. Does this mean that you're going to be abandoning your own son now too?
Well, of course I'm going to get that little brat out of my life. You think I'd want to keep someone as stupid as him, who put himself into $600 million worth of debt around?
Interesting. After all that crap from you about throwing your son away, even though I was his wife and all, you're now going to do the exact same thing because you're going to get burned now?
Well, of course. I'm too important to be getting hurt by him now, too.
Then you wouldn't mind telling him that, right?
Go right ahead. I still have my dead husband's money and his house, so I don't need a son like him in my life anymore. As long as I just last long enough with the money I have to start getting my Social Security, then I'll be just fine until the day I die.
I'm really sorry to hear you saying all of that, because what you're thinking won't happen.
And what the hell is that supposed to mean?
Because your husband went and left me with all of his money and everything.
What?
Seems your husband really didn't forgive you for abandoning him like you did after all, when you forced me to come and take care of him for you. Because of that, your husband's lawyer called me the other day and told me I'd be getting everything from him in the will.
You're lying about that, right?
Nope. And had both you and my husband come to me first about the debt and everything, instead of forging my name onto those papers and forcing it all onto me, I would have used your husband's money to help pay it all off. But since you both went and stabbed me in the back like that, I no longer care about that debt anymore. I'm going to use all of this inheritance for my daughter and myself now.
Then that means this house is also...
I have no reason to live in a place like that, so I'm going to have to put it up for sale.
Hold on a moment. That would mean that I can no longer live in this house anymore, right?
That's right on the money. Considering all of this is the fruits of your labor, right?
Hey, please, Bo, rethink what you're planning on doing here. My son is already in so much debt, And if I'm to lose this house, there's no way the two of us could live.
Not my problem. As family, you're supposed to help one another out, right? Well, then how about you ask your son to let you live with him, and then you won't have to worry about becoming homeless anymore, right? Unlike the two of you, I'm not your family anymore, so none of that has anything to do with me, all right?
Wait, you'll forgive me if I go ahead and apologize for everything I had done to you, right? Right?
That's not going to happen. I have no intentions of ever talking to the two of you ever again, so don't you ever show those disgusting faces of yours around me again.
Did you finish moving in and everything?
Yeah, I think I finished up with all the plans I had for this move.
I am really sorry for all the trouble my family caused you, alright? I know that I couldn't repay you for everything you've done. Just know that I really am thankful for you.
What's this all about? You're making it seem like this is going to be the last time you ever see me, right?
What? Well, I mean, you and I are no longer family anymore.
That has nothing to do with the relationship you have with my daughter and I. The only people I cut ties to were your mother and your brother. Unlike those two, you are still like a little brother to me, and you always will be.
Thank you so much for saying that. You really made my day with that.
From here on out, you and I will still be family, so if there is ever anything you need from me, please don't be afraid to ask.
Alright, I sure will.
Right after I was finished talking with Georgia for the last time, I went to court, and that's where my husband and I settled the divorce, and I was able to get full custody of my daughter from him. He would be forced to pay child support for the next 2 years, until she turned 18 years old, and was lucky enough to dodge a settlement for me in the divorce. However, that wasn't the only thing he needed to go to court for, as the next case on the list was him and his mother facing accounts that they'd both gone and forged my name onto official documents. And thankfully, with the help of my friend the lawyer, he was able to come in and help show evidence of all that to the court, and that landed the both of them with $10,000 settlements they had to pay me for causing such issues for me. After having lost both of their houses and the inheritance that was thought to be going to them, both Georgia and her son had to move into a really small studio apartment together. Just like I was told, my husband went and tried to start up another business that would make him a bunch of money in a short time instead of getting a normal job. And that was something that Georgia didn't like at all. She was actually against something like that from the very start and wanted her son to do nothing more than get a real job and just work to pay off all his debt. But because he had never listened to her, she went with his idea of forcing me to pay off his debt and then tried to do the same to her younger son before he told her to screw off. However, after we both were able to escape her, she turned back to her older son and told him he couldn't start another business, even though that's all he wanted. Because of that, those two ended up really starting to grow distant from one another, and every night, the two would have fights that made everyone in the apartment building upset. There were plenty of cases of them having to deal with the landlord and everyone else because of said fighting, and one time, it had gotten so bad that the police were called. However, they never ended up getting evicted from the place. And soon after all the fighting started to die down, they both went out and got themselves part-time jobs in order to start bringing in some money that could be used on paying off that debt for once. As for myself, on the other hand, I was able to find myself a new job, and there I've been making more money than I initially thought I could with my lacking resume. I was able to get all of that money from my father-in-law had left behind for me, as well as money from the buyer of his house, after only a few weeks of it being on the market. Of course, it is a lot of money, but I'm putting it all away into my savings, and won't be touching a cent of it until after I've put my daughter through school. There will hopefully be some money left over for myself, as well as when all is said and done with my daughter. But in case there isn't, I'm going to make sure to continue working for a long time, and using that money I've earned for myself. And, depending on what school she ends up going to next, I'm thinking of moving closer to there too, so that we can continue to live together and have the warm and caring family that my husband never gave us. Finally, as for David, he never ended up having to see his family again either, after he told both Georgia and his older brother that he was cutting ties to them. Because of that, he had finally felt a lot of freedom now that he had never once had with his brother and mother always treating him like a tool. And because of that, we do have some plans when summer has come around to go out and celebrate by doing the one thing we've all agreed would be a really fun time for our families, and that's going to a water park resort for a week. David also spoke with me for a little bit after I'd moved into my new place, and he agreed to pay around $20,000 for my daughter's education, as his way of finally paying me for all I'd done for his father and him in the past. I really didn't need any of that money from him for my daughter, But it does make me happy to finally see someone like David looking relieved for finally repaying me like that. Thank you for watching and listening. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought of the story. And we look forward to seeing you at the next story.